Hello, everyone. We would like to welcome you to the Africa Series Executive Program promotional webinar. On behalf of Saïd Business School, University of Oxford, and EBII Group, we give you the warmest welcome to this webinar, and we're going to be spending 60 minutes with you, sharing the content, but also giving you a little bit of a flavor of how this program will be rolled out. Prior to starting, I would like to give you some housekeeping that I will be showing in the next slide in order for us to have the introduction of the agenda and then as well as the housekeeping. This is an audio broadcast, so attendee microphones will be muted during the entire webinar. However, we welcome everyone to ask questions during the webinar at any moment you would like. Using the Q&A box. Please submit your questions at any time as mentioned, and we would like to have as an engaging session as we can. We're gonna provide a few minutes towards the end to make sure that we could answer as many questions as possible. Now, I would like to run you through the agenda just to give you a heads up of where we are. We're gonna have some welcome remarks by our guest speaker. We're going to also provide you some overview of the program with key content. And then we're going to have one of our professors give you a taste of what the context and the content of the program will be, and then we'll be ending and having the Q&A. Now, I would like to, at this moment, walk you through having you with an introduction of the program, and I'm going to hand over the microphone to our colleague, Adjoa Ajay-Twom from EBII Group. Thank you, Adjoa.
Thank you very much, Henry, and good afternoon, everyone. You're most welcome to this launch event. We're very excited to have you. So as Henry already mentioned, today is a launch event of the Oxford EBII Partnership Executive Program. So I'll give you a little bit of a background about EBII Group, who we are as an organization. For us as an organization, creating a future Africa as a magnet for global investment is the core of what we do. We provide, so we are a risk management consultancy firm. It's with a global offering, but we have a special interest in Africa. And in terms of our services, we provide training and education, one of which is the program that we're launching today. We also provide bespoke training for financial service to banks, other financial service entities, as well as government in Africa and outside of Africa. We also provide advisory services in the area of anti-money laundering, sanctions, terrorist financing, also in the area of ESG, which is our new offering. We also we've also launched our latest innovation, which many of you are also aware of, which is the Africa Compliance Hub. It's a private intelligence platform that provides latest compliance, development, and expert content in key African industries and across all the 55 countries in Africa. And then lastly, we have our annual summit, which last year was the launch of the annual summit. It's called the EBII Investment Risk and Compliance Summit. And that attracted people from across 84 countries with over 5,000 attendees for last year. So that's pretty much what we do as an organization. Now, why is the EBII Oxford partnership? Why have we partnered with the University of Oxford for this program? So the first thing I'll say is, as I mentioned earlier, creating a future Africa as a magnet for global investment is very core to what we do. And so there is a shared kind of, in terms of where the visions of both organizations are. The University of Oxford Saïd Business School is very committed to deepening and strengthening its engagement with the African continent by contributing to the empowerment of its leaders. EBII Groups is also very committed to making it easier for investors and for firms to navigate the African investment landscape, especially in the area of risk and compliance. So this is a little quote from me that says, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement poses new set of challenges for investors and organizations seeking to invest on the African continent. Now, government needs to improve their market and business environment to attract investors, while foreign investors need tools and resources to make the right decisions. And our job at the EBII Group is to make these decisions easier for both government institutions and individual investors through our advisory services, our educational program, and of course, our summit as well. Now, we're looking at the opportunities. So there's so much opportunities on the African continent at the moment. The very first one, which is the African Continental Free Trade, we're all very much aware that that is officially, it commenced officially trading since the 1st of January this year. And according to the World Bank, 100 million will be lifted out of poverty through the effective implementation of this agreement by 2035. There's also projections by the AfCFTA of 450 billion being generated by 2035. The next thing is Africa has a young population. The African population is young and is rapidly growing, and cities are urbanizing. So the Africa current population is around 1.2 billion, and it's projected to reach 1.7 billion by 2030. That is the young population. Also by 2050, Africa will have a quarter of the world's consumers, where 60% of the population are under 25. So that's a whole pool of young talent and entrepreneurs. And also according to Brookings Institution, by 2030, it is expected that the annual spending by African consumers and businesses will reach 6.66 trillion. That's also a very huge amount. And then lastly, Africa is industrializing as well. So that means, I mean, according to Brookings, again, there's estimate that African industries have the opportunity to double production to nearly 1 trillion within a decade. And then 3/4 of this growth is likely to come from manufacturing. There's also the increasing digital and mobile access, which figure shows that Sub-Saharan Africa saw the world's fastest rate of new broadband connection. That was between 2008 to 2015. And the mobile traffic across Africa is expected to increase 7-fold, and that's between 2017 and 2022. So there's still, again, like a lot of opportunities. But of course, so the next slide, we're going to talk about the challenges. Now that comes with its own challenges, and why we are launching this program to help this market participants navigate a lot of these. So most of these challenges were challenges that were already there. But of course, with COVID-19 and with all that is going on around the world, these have heightened. So we've got challenges around the market uncertainties and volatilities, and that's also related to the currency, the fluctuation, and several other things. So we've also got the due diligence challenges. And then some of these relates to inaccessible documentary information. In the past, to do due diligence on the African continent, you have to be physically there to do an effective due diligence, because a lot of the documents, you just can't get it electronically. Of course, with COVID, that makes it more challenging. And you've also got the limitations of on-site visit with a lot of these restrictions, travel restrictions, lockdown. It makes it very challenging. We've got data integrity issues, financial crime issues. All of these poses heightened challenges when doing due diligence. We've also got the political and social unrest, which, of course, if you're an investor and your investment is linked to a government or even during an election season, then that could pose challenge as well. There's also the cultural, local knowledge and network. So as an investor, it will be difficult to create a successful business without understanding how African cultures differ from Western society. So strong local relationships play a huge role in its business successful integration and growth on the continent. And therefore, foreign investors must have must be on the ground to conduct due diligence, as well as having a credible local network and knowledge. And I think some of the mistakes that a lot of foreign investors may make sometimes is going to Africa with a mindset thinking that the whole continent have similar risk and similar opportunities, which of course it's completely different from across the continent. In Ghana alone, we have 49 languages and 9 of them is taught in school. Of course, English is the main one, but it's important for an investor to have this understanding and a cultural understanding as well. And then lastly, also with the exit options, that could be also an issue. A majority of African economies have volatile currencies, and to protect them, governments sometimes institute laws that create barriers for capital repatriation. And so that could then also be a challenge. Now, so the next slide. The next slide is the EBII and Oxford partnership, the solution. And so this program is aimed to help bring some clarity around doing business in Africa. So we'll be looking at we'll be going into more details with as our other speakers take the stage. And so that's it from me for now. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Henry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adjoa. Thank you very much. As Adjoa mentioned, for us, local context is of extreme importance to make sure that this program is going to be helping the local and the regional economies of Africa. We're very pleased today to have Honorable Minister Sidi Keita, who's the Minister for Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment of the Gambia. He's going to provide us some remarks of how a program like this is suitable for some of the economic and social goals of the continent. Honorable Minister, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon to the participants on this online webinar. And it's my singular honor to give the welcoming remarks for this important session. As you have introduced, my ministry is responsible for the promotion of foreign direct investment in Gambia. And we are pleased to be associated with this program run jointly by the Saïd Business School of Oxford and the EBII Group. As is well known, EBII Group is the leading player in facilitating investment and supporting foreign direct investment in Africa. And with that, Gambia is also a part. And we all know that Saïd Business School is the well-known, renowned business school globally. The EBII Group supports investors along the investment process to navigate the hurdles around understanding the market for foreign investors in Africa, local market and cultures, as well as to facilitate the understanding of the associated due diligence. Why we have identified this as a suitable program, particularly in the context of Gambia, is to pitch how a foreign investor will see Gambia, like any African country now, to be relevant to this endeavor. Gambia is a favorable investment destination. We have a dedicated agency for the promotion of foreign direct investment that is called Gambia Import-Export Promotion Agency. And we offer a range of incentives, including tax holidays for a minimum of 5 years for foreign direct investments above a threshold of $250,000 upwards, and duty-free items, duty-free on capital items associated with those investments. And we have favorable investment climate, as well as a talented human resource base. The Oxford EBII program is very relevant to any investors who want to invest in Africa, in the sense that it is going to serve the critical, useful input of knowledge and skills for any investors that want to participate in the African market. It will be very relevant to foreign direct investors, central bankers, insurance market players, and every partner that is associated with investment in Africa. And why should Africa be a single, why should Africa feature prominently as an attractive investment base? We all know Africa is a growing population, and currently it stands at a level of 1.2 billion. And currently, Africa has created the single African continental free trade area. It's having a youthful population, and this population demographic has a positive dividend of having a youthful population. With this makes Africa very relevant. And as a result, this endeavor of the Saïd Business School and the EBII Group to facilitate and enhance the investors' knowledge in this growing market is very relevant and timely. Why this relevance is the case? Because the single most important deterrent to investors is understanding the local market and the rules by which foreign direct investment is guided. Africa is a diverse continent with different cultures and norms, but this program will facilitate investors to understand and be able to work through this process. So with that, we feel that the single largest tool and the most relevant one will be to empower the investors with the knowledge, skills, and expertise in order to be able to invest properly and appropriately in Africa. So we as a country, particularly as a ministry, are pleased to be very associated with this program, in the sense that the EBII is a relevant and the go-to group for understanding the investment climate in Africa in general. And currently, even Gambia is featuring with them, and we're quite pleased with the progress so far. Of course, it goes without saying the role of Saïd Business School that will be so crucial to this program. As we all know, Saïd Business School is the business school to go when it comes to allied education, particularly in these current times. And they have developed a suite of online programs that are relevant and accessible globally. So we believe that that will make it timely and make it very affordable, accessible across the globe for any investor from any part of the world to be able to partake and understand the lessons and expertise required in order to appropriately invest in Africa. The proposed program is very suitable as it is backed by the academic rigor of a prominent and renowned business school of Saïd Business School of the University of Oxford. And I, as the minister, am singularly honored to be associated with this endeavor, and I look forward to the deliberation of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. You provide us with a good context. For this part, I'm going to go over the program. And as you already heard from Ajoa, there is all of these opportunities and challenges. Perhaps I'd like to provide you in the next slide some of the drivers in regards to financial services, because this program will have financial services at the core. First of all, in 2015, as you are all aware, the world embraced a global agenda with the Sustainable Development Goals, which is like a 2030 agenda that was sponsored by the United Nations and signed by over 192 countries, but where the private sector and specifically the financial services have a very important role to contribute to the achievement of those 17 goals. Another important driver has been how important environmental, social, and governance matters are to financial services, especially where there is materiality and where there is an opportunity for financial services to integrate some of those aspects. ESG is becoming mainstreamed, and ESG goes a lot beyond just a risk mitigant or a risk management tool. It is also an opportunity to enhance impact by a lot of the financial services. So that's a second trend, and we believe that in the emerging markets, perhaps the ESG agenda is only arriving, and there is an opportunity to catch up and learn from what has happened in the developed world, but obviously providing it with a local context. Another important element that I believe in Africa, it's quite relevant, is the role of fintech and digital financial services. We see that in the case of Africa, Africa somehow went forward, it leaped forward certain technologies in order to use mobile money, in order to use mobile financial services, in order to use technology to provide access to finance. And while it is still the region of the world that requires the most work to make it more accessible and with good quality of financial services, it has some interesting experiences of success. So I think that is another element that we find could really,
help financial services, especially in a post-COVID world, when we see evidence shows that those financial service providers that had better digital platforms for customers to access their financial services have weathered the crisis a lot more and could really build a lot better in the recovery. Another important driver in Africa is also another example of this is the demographical changes that we see in the role of women and youth. This is something that we already are seeing, what people call genderless investing, that is trying to empower women in the different industries, but importantly in the financial services, but also how to cater to youth, especially as youth are going to be facing the big challenges of this crisis that we have faced. And then inclusion. I think this is also linked to this. We're talking a lot about more equity, justice, and inclusion of all different minorities, but also of all different disenfranchised people. And we see this a lot in impact investing, for example, where a lot of the opportunities that are being developed are targeted to people who had been left out of the markets. And lastly, in order for financial services to thrive, you need to have a deeper, liquid, and transparent capital markets. And while there is a lot happening on the private investing side, either on private equity or private debt, the importance is to actually help the local capital markets in Africa develop further. So some of these drivers, alongside of the macro drivers or macro trends that Ajua presented with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement and other opportunities, have been put into play as we design the program. And I'm now going to walk you through the program in the next slide, just to provide you a little bit of flavor. So first, I'm going to give you some key features and key learning objectives. As Ajua mentioned, this is an online offering, and we're going to have 4 modules. Each module will have somewhere between 3 or 4 sessions, and we are hoping to have a heterogeneous group of people from different industries or from different parts that are related to financial services, be it regulators, policymakers, investors, financial institutions, of course, and other firms. And while this program has an Africa focus, we would like to have people that are working either within Africa or with an Africa angle, even if they're working globally. Then the idea is that, the main learning goals is to provide you with state-of-the-art knowledge around the new frontiers, challenges, and trends that finance is facing and how that interacts with Africa's economic and sustainable development. We would also like to have interactive discussions to bring your own realities and your own case studies on how different African stakeholders are accessing or not accessing global investment community. That could go from foreign direct investments all the way to access to capital. And the idea is to provide with best practices or lessons learned to make sure that the right business models could attract the right type of capital and bringing more funding flows. Lastly, it's important to assess risks, and I think EBII with the Compliance Hub has done a phenomenal job in providing a lot more cross fertilization and cross opportunities for learning, and we are going to try to also use some of that to engage with opportunities that Africa presents. At the end, all participants that are able to attend all the modules and all the sessions will be issued with a certificate about this program. So in the next slide, I'm going to provide you with a little bit of an overview of the modules. So as Ajua mentioned, the idea here is to bring Oxford's rigor and academic track record on evidence and research, but at the same time, aligning that with practitioners and people who are in the field, who are working on some of these issues. So we're going to be having a mix of academics and practitioners. We're going to be supported by EBII in order to bring some guest speakers or some keynote speakers from the continent who could also provide the local context, because for us, local context matters a lot. We're going to be designing and looking at applications in the period between March and June, and we're going to be launching the program officially with the first module in the month of September, and we would have 6 months to complete the program between September 2021 and March 2022. I'm going to provide you with a high-level description of each module, and then I'm going to go a lot deeper into each module. So we're going to have one module on private investing, which is going to be looking at private debt and private equity. We're going to have another module on public investing, which is mostly listed securities, fixed income, and also equity investments. We're going to have a module about governance and risk management. And we're going to have another module on sustainable investing and digital finance, which I will have the honor to co-teach with my colleague Amir, who's going to speak later. Now, the modules are, all the members will come, all the participants will come together. We're going to be having those 3 or 4 sessions that would happen in one specific week. But alongside the program, and even before the program, we're going to have a virtual learning space that is going to have asynchronous content. There's going to be a mix of readings, articles, podcasts, videos, and forum discussions. So the idea is that while the modules are going to be the core learning opportunity for exchanging, the idea is that we would have an opportunity for all participants to also in parallel continue its learning journey. Now, in the next slides, I'm going to go a lot deeper into each of those modules just to give you a flavor. By all means, we are only going to start design next month, but these were in consultation with the lead academics who are going to support us. We are providing you with a little bit of a flavor, as I mentioned. So private investing, we believe that the equity and debt capital has been very important to finance Africa over the long term, and we see that it will remain very important, especially in a continent where you do have, from family businesses, but you also have very different and uneven levels of development of the markets in the subregions of the continent. So the idea is to provide here and to provide participants with technical skills that can support entrepreneurs to build a growth plan. So we're gonna sort of provide, 3 sessions for that module. We're gonna be discussing the private market ecosystem. We're gonna be looking at the whole process from buying, managing, funding, and selling a private market asset. We're gonna look about how to go about due diligence approaches for investors in Africa, looking at valuation models for specific assets and geographies, and then looking into assumptions and financial models to determine the asset value, the risk of investing in Africa. So this is just an idea. It's going to have both a private debt angle and a private equity angle. And the idea is to somehow provide you with the tools, but also exchange or bring some of your expertise into the classroom. The next module, which is the public investing, is going to mostly address the capital markets, and in order for enterprises in Africa to access and to also be able to manage their capital structure in the best way possible. So here we're going to be discussing, African securities in the global capital markets, the role of institutional investors in Africa's sovereign debt market, looking at the importance of financial stability, resilience, and lessons from previous crises. I think here COVID is going to be an important sort of zoom in that is going to be done. And the impact on capital markets. And lastly, the role of regulators, because regulators play a very important role on capital adequacy ratios and prudence and fiduciary. So that's just a little bit of a flavor. That's going to be on fixed income and public equities, and other capital market products that are being launched recently. Now, having those asset classes and presenting the realities of those asset classes have to have a transversal element of governance and risk management. And in the next slide, we're presenting to you, here what's the role of governance and risk in strategic planning, in capital allocation, in good governance and risk management. And here we are very lucky to be partnering with EBII's very strong compliance and expertise. Especially Joa as the leader has a lot to offer, and she's been building a lot of opportunities on that. So here we're going to be going from standards for effective corporate governance in banking to the role of regulation in the changing environment, the right balance between reputation, compliance, and revenue, how to manage the different operational risks, credit risk or market risks, and then also looking at international developments in reporting and transparency, because that obviously it's an important matter. Now, the last module, it's a lot more, I would say, topical in the sense that it's going to be on sustainable investing and digital finance. And we decided to provide this, I would say, more granular module as a way of understanding and placing Africa in sort of the latest trends in financial services. So sustainable investment is something that has been developing for a few years. The technological advances is providing an opportunity for crowding in private capital. So Amir and I will be co-teaching this session. We're going to provide you with global trends on sustainable and impact investing. We're going to be looking at specifically in Africa, certain case studies, challenges, and opportunities. We're going to be looking at the role of technology in accessing financial services, but not just accessing, but also using them and making sure that they are the right type of financial services for the Africa's population. And then we're going to be talking a little bit more about the trends that we see in both the sustainable investing and the digitalization. So these are the 4 modules. I mean, if I can sum it up in a quote, I will leave you a quote in the next slide, that somehow, we are trying to bring something that is a bespoke, so it's custom. We're doing this on behalf of EBII, so participants that come to this are trying to, blend theory and practice. We would like to bring you in a rewarding learning journey where there's going to be a lot of stimulating debates and discussions. I think our biggest goal is to transform the thinking of world, of how the world deals with the recovery path, but also with the other economic and climate realities that we are facing. And hopefully participants can go out of the course and bring some of this innovation and reimagining the business models for the long term in order to make sure that Africa is able to meet the sustainable development goals and develop a lot further. So that's the program. Please, as mentioned, you can start putting your questions in the Q&A of the program itself or certain elements. I invite you to do this from right now. But I'm now going to pass it on to my colleague, Amir. And with Amir, we're going to provide you with a bit of a teaser or a flavor of some of the content that we're going to be discussing, and providing you with a bit of context specifically linked to this module of sustainable investing that I mentioned in the last slide that I presented. Thank you very much. And Amir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Henry. It's a great pleasure to be here. Good morning, everyone. Thank you also, Joa, for this great introduction to this program. And we are very happy to be collaborating with EBII on what promises to be a great journey throughout investing topics and financial services topics, particularly with the context, with the African context. So my name is Amir Amelzadeh. I'm a professor in accounting, and what I would like to do in the next 10-15 minutes is to give you kind of a flavor, as Henry has said, on what we will cover in one of the modules, in the 4th module, as Henry has presented, and give you a little bit of a, so to speak, of a teaser of the topics on what sustainable finance is and why it has become such a big trend, such a fundamental shift in finance. And on this slide, you'll see several headlines from the FT and some other sources that speak of essentially this trend. And there's a lot of acronyms that are being thrown around in this field, which is a new and emerging field in finance and business around sustainability, or ESG, environmental, social, and governance aspects. Some call it ethical investment, some call it responsible investing or responsible finance. But really what it is, it's a new trend, a trend that has been developing over the years, as Henry said, has been gotten a lot of impetus with the UN Sustainable Development Goals that were established in 2015, and has now essentially taken hold in financial markets and is becoming mainstream in financial markets. And this trend is manifesting itself in the way businesses will be able to attract financing, and the way financial institutions are going to manage their risks and also think about investments in local economies, and also in the way how international investors are essentially investing their funds across the globe, thinking a lot more about the environmental impact of those investments, the social impact on local communities, employees, and others, and also governance aspects, how businesses are and financial institutions govern themselves. So if you look on the slide on the left here, with the headline, "A Fundamental Reshaping of Finance." So this comes from a letter from the CEO of the largest asset manager in the world, BlackRock. So here, Larry Fink being the CEO, and he speaks of essentially this shift, and that that businesses have to embrace this new normal, so to speak, in terms of that it's not about short-term profits anymore, only for the sake of shareholders, but that businesses have to think long-term and think of the long-term benefits for a wider stakeholder audience, which ultimately then will also benefit long-term profitability and long-term shareholder value. And this just shows how larger asset managers and investors in general are more and more pressuring businesses to focus also on their environmental, social, and social impact, and also putting a lot more emphasis on how these firms are governed in terms of their board structures and independence of boards. And of course, one of those aspects is essentially climate change, which has become one of the big issues, and as well as what we would call shareholder engagement, and we will talk about this in our module a lot more in detail, how, and this is what the headlines on the right-hand side kind of try to tell you, is that investors are now pressuring businesses in investor meetings as well as in larger shareholder meetings to change their business practices if they believe there are issues around their social or environmental impact. So there's a lot of changes coming to businesses, to financial institutions. Some call it the ethical investment boom. I think it's going beyond ethical investments, and we in this fourth module will discuss these trends in a lot more detail, what they mean for businesses, in particular in the African context, for the African continent, what challenges these pose to businesses, but also what opportunities this will pose. So on the next slide, I will just want to give you a flavor of why now. So why this trend is, we're seeing this trend, and why investors and regulators actually are becoming a lot more sensitive to these issues. So here on this graph, it's a bit wild, but let me explain this graph. So this comes from the World Economic Forum, and the World Economic Forum annually conducts a survey with business leaders, investment managers, civil society, and regulators, asking them what they believe the major risks are to the global economy, and in particular, more broadly, but more specifically also to their organizations. And here on this graph, you see on the right hand, on the x-axis, so on the horizontal axis, from 1 to 5 is scale how likely the respondents have essentially associate particular risks to occur. So they were asked to rank these from 1 to 5 by likelihood. And on the y-axis, on the vertical one, you see what they believe the impact of these risks are going to be, how severe these impacts are going to be on their organizations. So if you look at the top right hand corner, so if you look at the picture as a whole, you'll see different colors. So these are the different risks categorized into different categories. So blue are economic risks, then we have environmental risks are green, societal risks red, technological and geopolitical risks. So if you look at the top right hand corner, you'll see that the risks that are seen as the most likely and the most impactful are mostly green. So all environmental, in particular climate action failure, extreme weather events, biodiversity loss, natural disasters, water crisis, social risks. And so this seems to be the focus of businesses and investors. And they believe these are the risks that matter most currently. You see infectious diseases on the top left. So this is from 2020. So the survey has been done, I believe, early 2020. So this was before the pandemic really hit. If you look at the next survey, so this 2021 survey, you'll see that this has been pushed to the right as well because it's at the forefront. But you'll see that it's not only economic risks that are seen as important, but it's in particular social and environmental risks that are being seen as very likely and very impactful on businesses. And given this trend, this then suggests that investors and businesses have to respond to these risks in a manner that takes this into account, because it will affect business value. It will affect how investors will allocate capital. So, and this leads me to the next slide, where I'll show you some overview of the market size of what we see now as the sustainable finance market, just to give you a sense of how large the market is. So if you think of, and this comes from different sources, the International Finance Corporation, the PRI, and some of my own calculations. So if you think of total financial assets globally, that's around 350 trillion US dollars in assets, financial assets. Of those, roughly a little less than a third, so about 100 trillion, are what is said to be assets that are managed by PRI signatories. So PRI signatories are, the PRI are the UN developed principles of responsible investing. So these asset managers and asset owners that sign the PRI, the principles, essentially commit themselves to taking into account in their investment process environmental, social, and governance aspects in whatever way. So these are all asset managers that now have essentially committed to ESG matters. Now, the 100 trillion takes into account all the assets that these asset managers manage. So if it's someone like the BlackRock that manages around 8 trillion US dollars, that takes into account the entire 8 trillion. Now, only a smaller part of those assets actually involve certain direct strategies that involve ESG considerations. And this is the next level down, so what we would call sustainable investments. So these are actual strategies that directly take into account environmental factors. So whether it's in how they construct portfolios, how they can you go back, please, to the previous slides? Thank you. How they construct portfolios, or how they manage engagement with their investee companies. Now, those strategies, we can then delve a little bit into more detail in what is called impact. So either impact investing itself or impact aligned. Those are now slightly different because here the emphasis is also on being able to actually measure the environmental or social impact that these investments have. So here investors are also focused on trying to understand how their investments are addressing climate related or environmentally related issues, or social related issues such as alleviating poverty or others. So so these could be green bonds or social bonds or other sustainability linked financial instruments, and we will talk about these in a lot more detail in the module, what these are, how businesses can use these instruments to attract capital, and how financial institutions are essentially involved in creating these instruments, and what opportunities that creates for these. So on the next slide, I'll just briefly show you kind of the different nuances of the spectrum of investing, and why this has led to a lot of confusion in the marketplace of what it actually is. And we will delve into each of these individual kind of sections in much more detail in the module. So you can think of this as on the left-hand side, so the left side's extreme, as what I would call ESG investing, which is essentially the traditional form of investing where the investors are seeking primarily a financial return, but also take into account environmental and social aspects into their investment decisions. But the primary objective is to generate the highest financial return possible, but potentially with the constraint of not doing any harm to society or the environment. On the other side of the spectrum, then we see a much more the dial going towards a social return. So here the primary objective is to actually have a measurable social impact. So there's the impact investing spectrum, or sometimes also thematic investing. So this would be investments into renewable energies or water sources or other themes. And here the objective is primarily to generate a social return, so to alleviate a social problem or environmental problem, but also at the same time receive a return. But here the investors are much more happy to forego some return or with a lower return, as long as they achieve the goal of alleviating this the social problem. And in the middle, we have what we would call SRI, or social responsible investing, or norms-based investing, where certain investor groups, so often religious institutions that have big endowments, invest according to their religious views. And we'll discuss these in a lot more detail. So on the next slide, just to give you kind of an overarching overview of what this now means, why we'll see this momentum in this reshaping of the financial landscape, and what that actually means for businesses and financial institutions on the African continent. I think so. As I said, so one is the risk landscape has changed, and we have seen these global sustainable challenges. Predominantly climate change is one, but there's others that where investors see the urgency and businesses see the urgency to address those problems, and which require an enormous amount of capital. And we need to think about innovative ways of attracting that capital to businesses that are able to address these fundamental problems. And you might have seen how certain businesses that are already able to address some of these problems, so renewable energy firms, electric battery producers, or others, are now essentially able to attract a lot more capital and attract higher valuations because they are in this space. We see increasing demand, and we'll talk about this in much more detail with Henry as well as mentioned it. We see this dramatic demographic shift, and the younger generations that are inheriting wealth are much more inclined to invest according to their norms and values, which include considering environmental and social aspects. So we see this large demand, and this essentially then creates demand for investment products as well, which essentially requires financial institutions to come up with innovative solutions. But there's also another kind of drive of this, another dimension to this is the regulatory pressure, where central banks and financial markets regulators are now in particular focusing on financial institutions to have them enable them to allocate capital to these more sustainable businesses. So we'll see a lot of different drivers, and we'll talk about these in a lot more detail. So what does this mean now for financial institutions and businesses? I think there are a variety of risks now that financial institutions need to think about. So there are new sources of risk. So stranded assets are one. So assets that previously have been valuable might not be as valuable going forward if regulation changes or the market environment changes. There will be other risks, or more systemic risks stemming from climate change, risks from investors, or also consumers being more active in demanding more sustainable business practices. But there will also be opportunities for financial institutions to grow new products, to build new products, grow in new markets, find new markets because of these new customers that have a slightly different taste and preferences than traditional customers have had. And this brings me also to companies then that now are able to attract new funding sources from a completely new type of investor that has different preferences and different investment aims, that might be also able to attract funding on more preferential terms. And they've just recently been a pharmaceutical company, just as an example, that has issued a sustainability-linked bond where the interest rate was actually 0%, but the interest rate was also linked to a social outcome. And if the company doesn't achieve that social outcome, the interest rate would rise and the company would pay a higher interest rate. So incentives are essentially aligned now with a particular social interest. So there's a lot of changes happening in finance, as Larry Fink said, a fundamental reshaping of finance. And this creates a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities for businesses to engage in this. And we will talk about these in particular, what this means for businesses on the African continent, and how they can play a major role in this reshaping of finance. So I look forward to seeing a lot of you on, hopefully on this program, and we will discuss a lot more these topical issues, in particular in Module 4. I hope this has gave you a kind of a taster of what is to come. And I'll hand over to Joa to conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Amir. That was incredible. So thank you. Really good session there. So now the floor is opened for Q&A. And actually, before we do the Q&A, let me just talk about why you should take this course. And so I think it's pretty self-explanatory why you should take this course. Oxford University is home. Oxford is home to several globally renowned, interdisciplinary research centers, and also, it's a leading, cutting-edge leading research center. It's also #1 university in the world. They build state-of-the-art knowledge around the new frontiers, challenges, and trends in finance. So this program is what it's going to do, and it would also and how that interact with Africa's economic development and sustainability. So you get that insight. The program will promote discussions around issues that impacts the ability of African stakeholders to access a global investment community, including providing them with the best practice ways to innovate, attract, and sustain right business models and funding flows. You'll be taught by leading experts. So That's the one reason. Program is inspirational. There's innovative way of teaching. Oxford faculty is known for delivering programs that combine inspirational teaching with innovative and experiential learning methods. There's also the Africa Insight that we brought on board. So this will be really interesting, and I believe that, as we mentioned earlier, there's so much opportunities now in terms of Africa. It seems like Africa really is the future for investment. And so, it's important to stay ahead of the game and ensure that you have the right tools to take advantage of the opportunities on the continent. Next slide. So in terms of key criteria to applying for the program, we're looking at mid to senior level. So you would have to have about between 8 to 15 years plus experience. The industries, it's mainly targeted. I mean, we're opening it to all industries with an interest in Africa or want to do some kind of investment. But most especially the financial service industry will benefit greatly. The information technology, telecommunication infrastructure, extractive manufacturing, agriculture, and also the government, the regulators and the policymakers. We're targeting those. But again, it's open to all. Anybody can apply. And in terms of your foundation knowledge, you have to have some kind of experience, or your business should have an Africa focus angle. So this is the entry requirement, and it's a 6-month program, which starts in September and will finish the following year, 2022, February. And the next slide. So the program, a detailed program with registration details, costs, key dates will be sent to all participants. This will be ready by tomorrow. So we will send it out to everyone, including the brochure, the links to how to register. All the relevant information will be sent out tomorrow, and also next week it will be made available. So now we're going to Q&A. Please ask as many questions as you can. And between myself, Amia, and Henry, we will do our best to answer all the questions. We have some questions already. And so the first question, it says, I found both of these talks really interesting, but have not been able to say for the whole talk, will you be making the recording available, or at least the slides? Yes, the recording will be available. We wanted to do the second webinar before we put out the recording. And so now that that's done, recording will be sent out by the end of this week. You should get the recording. And also, as mentioned earlier, all the relevant information, the brochure will be also sent out as well by the end of this week. And so that's, I believe that answers that question. The brochure has more detailed information than the slides, so hopefully the brochure will suffice. But by all means, if you would like the slides, let us know. We will send you the slides as well on individual basis. Yeah, as of when. The next question, they're asking, so there's the first question is, it says, will the recording or slides be shared with participants? Yes, I've answered that question. We will share that. So that's the first question. And then the second question is, in spite of the many challenges affecting Africa and Nigeria in particular, Nigeria still remains a great place to invest. For example, if a business can solve the problem of 10% of paying Nigerians, this would mean a lot of profit. How can private businesses like the real estate sector attract investment from abroad, given our great challenges with leadership, government policies? I will answer a little bit, but I'll also pass it on to with Henry and Amia to chip in. I believe that this course will support these private businesses that wants to attract funding from these foreign investors. The course will give you the right tools to be able to do that. So I believe the course will pretty much answer that question for you if you come on that program. But I'll also pass it on to Henry to add anything that he'd like to add to this question. And I believe that maybe Amia may also have something to add as well. So Henry, please, over to you.
Sure, thank you so much. And thank you for the question. Nigeria is indeed one of the most attractive markets for investors who are willing to invest in emerging markets. And that's the interesting thing, right? We are now seeing a lot of private equity and private debt investors that have a focus in emerging markets and have a focus in Africa. So a lot of these investors are not just perceiving risks, they are really managing risks. And I think in the real estate sector, for example, I think if businesses are developed with well structures, if there might even be ESG standards already aligned in those developments, especially on the environmental side, if there is a track record on the developer, that track record provides the economic viability, but also the way the project and the way the governance of that project is structured. A lot of those things made things a lot easier for investors to come. So I think that bottlenecks for attracting investors have to be addressed and have to be addressed at the market and ecosystem level. But I also think that there is appetite for investors to allocate more capital into Africa and specifically in Nigeria, because being such a large market also provides an opportunity for scale, and scale has upside. So as Joa said, I think the private investing course will address some of these matters that would provide you with a lot, more in depth into these issues. Thank you for the question.
Great answer, Henry. Just to add, maybe great question also, Bernadette. I think so. We've seen across a variety of emerging markets certain governance challenges on the national level, and investors are sensitive to those. But I think that essentially puts the onus on the businesses to essentially make sure that their governance structures ensure make sure that investors are seeing that their governance structures are robust and are alleviating certain doubts that investors might have essentially around general broader governance problems. And this is what I kind of mentioned before as well. Investors are a lot more focused now on ESG, and the G part has always been kind of a big emphasis for investors, but is becoming even stronger now, given certain, let's say, problems in the past that investors had in getting decent investment returns, where essentially these governance issues have come up. But I think so as Henry said, I think there's ample opportunities, and having standards and showing to investors essentially a variety of opportunities to them still opens up a lot of opportunities, and investors are open to those investment opportunities going forward. And we can discuss this in a lot more detail during this session.
Thank you, Amir. Yes, I think that answers the question. So yeah, despite the challenges with the government and the leadership, I believe that also the institutions have their own role to play as well. So you could focus on your internal controls framework as well. And I think that would, like they said, will also be very attractive to the investors, despite what the government is doing. And I've got another question. So if there are any more questions, please send it. Otherwise, we'll be finishing soon. But the last question we have has already been answered, which is, hope the slides will be sent to our mail. It looks like everybody would like the slides. So yes, we will then add the slides now to the brochure and the recording. So we'll send everything to your mail. So thank you for that. And then our time is up, but I don't know whether there's any more questions. If there is not, I think Henry would like to say something I could see. So Henry, over to you.
No, thank you. I just wanted to thank everyone for their engagement in this webinar and in the previous one. Thank obviously Amir, Joa, but also we've had a great team supporting us, Michelle, Matteo, and Sophia, among others. But this has been quite an opportunity for us to also understand some of the issues that people have in their minds, and we're going to take into consideration some of those in the design. So with this, I'll pass it to you, Joa, to do the final closing.
So thank you, Henry. Yeah, so as Henry said, we'd like to thank all of you. Our time is up now, but a very big thank you to everyone, a very big thank you to Amia, to Henry, to the team, and to everyone that has joined this webinar. Please send your questions. If there's any question that hasn't been addressed or you think of any questions in the future, we will be delighted to answer them, and stay tuned for more information. I wish you a great day and thank you very much. Bye-bye now. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.